Nothing we say here is investment advice, legal advice, life advice, or representative of the views of the organization we are part of or affiliated with. See chainabstracted.com for more information.
This is Chain Abstracted. I don't know what's the episode right now. It's been quite heavy this week and the last week. We're getting more and more interest, which I'm kind of excited. Trying to bring sort of a different set of builders, investors, like even sometimes like sort of thought leaders in the space. Today we have obviously Fluent guys, which is quite I'm excited about. I sometimes rave about them on Twitter as well because I'm quite excited about this idea of kind of like blending things, and I think it fits quite nicely to Chain Abstraction, but I'll let them speak. So if we can start with you, Dino, and a bit of a background about yourself, and then go ahead with Dimitri, and then we'll start kind of deep diving into Fluent.
Totally, man. Yeah, thanks, Altan. Always excited to chat with you. I know we always have good combos and very happy to be on the pod. So yeah, I'm Dino, one of the co-founders of Fluent and CEO of Fluent Labs. And my background, before I got into crypto a few years ago, was really coming from cloud computing. So I've worked on a bunch of stuff, always early stage startups within like dev tools, kind of AI infra. I've done some like Kubernetes based like workload placement stuff, some actually edge computing stuff, and even like intents, but not like crypto intents, like intent based networking. And so then I really got into this space like through that prism of like, hey, wow, some of this roll up Ethereum modular stuff looks a lot like the microservices world that I came from, and I think that this is probably going to be a really important thing. And so just dove down that rabbit hole, and got increasingly more involved in crypto, and then started Fluent with this guy.
Oh yeah,
Dimitri, you want to go?
yes. I was trying to find the mic button. Yeah. So yeah, my name is Dmitry. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Fluent. I am at crypto for almost 10 years, and for all these 10 years I work mostly with everything related with WebAssembly. Also developed like three blockchains in the past, and extremely involved in all this VM related research, everything that touches instructions, execution, how you can manipulate with transitions, and etc. with registers, etc. So actually, this is literally what we built inside Fluent. Yeah, so good.
Dimitri, are you based in the US or somewhere else?
No, so I'm based in Dubai. Or actually, right now I'm trying to save myself from extremely hot weather in Dubai. So
Yeah, I know.
right now I'm
I know.
in Amsterdam here.
So how did you all meet? I guess Dino is in New York, and then like how did you guys how did Fluent come together?
Yeah, no, it's there's the kind of like origin story of like Fluent, which I can actually, you know what, Dimitri, I'm gonna maybe you could take this one because obviously you know started the project like first, and then I'm happy to offer color on how we met because it's kind of funny, but I'll let you start.
Yeah, so how we met? We actually met on the Zulu conference that happened 1.5 years ago, last spring. And it was quite funny meeting because we both decided to go to the restaurant and got poisoned and got extremely painful food poisoning that time. And we spent like almost 2 days with almost 40 degrees temperature and was trying to recover from this. And during the conference, yes, we had all the discussions, found a lot of like connections, and decided to build the product together.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about even just like rewind further back, right? Like some of the experimentation that you're doing around
Yeah, so I would say,
ZK and well,
yeah, that's true. Originally, I started with several experiments with ZK. We tried to build the simplified version of ZK VM, and after all this, quite not quite time consuming, but like heavy research, decided to focus on WebAssembly because WebAssembly, from my perspective, is the most efficient in terms of representing the whole application in one place, because using WebAssembly you can represent the entire application structure, including all memory relations. It doesn't use any registers, and it's quite easy and a well-known tool set for developers. And all developers, actually, they know how to use WebAssembly. It's already integrated and supported by all programming languages, all compilers. And so I can go even further and explain how we decided to build blended execution and the Fluent. But actually, we can return to this question later if you want.
Yeah. I mean, when I met you guys, the way we met so we are like, obviously you guys know, like Near is running on Wasm. That's one of the things pulled me into Near. When I first met you guys were thinking about ZK Wasm, and then I guess like eventually the sort of the problem space got bigger. And how does this all come together? Like, I guess because now we're seeing, like, I guess when you look at Ethereum, you have like obviously movement, which is like, oh, I'm going to do a move EVM, and I have a bunch of like EVM things that's coming up, which is quite like just forks of each other, right? Like people just fork EVM and kind of build on top of it. But how do you guys come together where like, hey, let's just build this one thing where we just can blend everything?
Yeah, so it was quite funny because originally we started to blend internally inside our product because we're trying to solve a quite simple ZK problem, a problem where there is only one language that can be used to represent nested execution and execute your state transition. So we try to represent everything using state transitions. And after like maybe 6 months of research and developing these special compilers, virtual machines, to present the state, we figured out that we actually started to transit not only just the VM, but figured out that we can transit everything, and we can represent anything we want using the same approach. And we started to do experiments. We decided to fully drop EVM support from our blockchain, and we enabled EVM support through our first blended execution approach. So we represented EVM support through our compilation targets, through our internal technology. And then we continued this research and figured out that we theoretically can represent anything. Like we can bring any execution environment or EVM support, or actually VM support, using the same approach, and developers can even run different transactions, and we can combine all this stuff together in one place.
And just to shed some light on like more of like the go-to-market like business side of that along the way, right? Like, because clearly it evolved, and we saw. I mean, I let me just like unpack a mental model around it, right? So clearly there are a ton of EVM chains. EVM L2s are really like taking off, and there's a lot of them are indistinguishable from one another. And people love to shit on the EVM, but I'm actually not gonna shit on the EVM for a second. I'm gonna say like there are a slew of benefits with the EVM. They're just not technical benefits necessarily. They're like go-to-market benefits. Like think like a startup, like put the startup hat on. You're like you're developing an app or trying to build a chain. You're like, okay, well, you know, there's a ton of code written for EVM. There's like a ton of building blocks there. There's like integrations there's frameworks and kind of like tooling built for it. And like all of that has like a lot of value. And even just the fact that you can, if you have a problem, you could type it into ChatGPT. You don't have to like hunt down Vitalik, right? And like, so like, there's a lot of, I'll say, go-to-market benefits, but at the same time, over the past year, what we've seen is like a ton of almost technical benefits going hand in hand with these like novel VMs that are popping up. You mentioned Move, like SVM. Clearly, Solana's gotten a lot of mind share, and actually that's starting to get its own go-to-market benefits as well, ecosystem benefits as well, network effects. So like, there's all these interesting pieces of this design space of execution environments, but like before the blended execution approach, you kind of had to like pick and choose and make pretty stark trade-offs. So like from my perspective, it was like, okay, well, is there a way that we can kind of maintain the backwards compatibility with like most of the EVM world today, and you know, get a lot of like those developers starting to build on Fluent, and then just kind of like transition people into kind of more and more novel like ways with a greater variety of like tools to build it in one place. And so like that was definitely very appealing. And I think as we were looking through, we were like kind of iterating on the implementation, and also doing some research into like other approaches to try to solve this problem, because we didn't invent that, like that, you know, clearly people have been thinking about like, how do you solve this this problem of like unifying things together in one place, we just found that a lot of the other implementations were very clunky and more akin to just like taking multiple different VMs and just like shoving them together. And we decided to solve that from the ground up, um, and we found the much more like elegant approach to be this like, one VM with a bunch of precompiles that make the thing work instead of running all the VMs.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, that's actually pretty exciting. I mean, we think about it, people think about it in a cross-chain world, right? Like, hey, I have this like move blockchain that talks to, let's say, like an SVM one. This is quite exciting from the developer side. I can see that you can just deploy anything you like. Maybe let's take a step back. There might be some folks that when they heard blended execution, they're like, what the hell does that mean? So walk me through in a world where you guys come to I know you guys have been building on the sidelines and come to a mainnet, and how does the experience should feel like for the developers first? And I'll let that kind of build out, and then obviously the top of the funnel, which is the users, right? Why should those two care about the VM that they use?
Yeah, I can start with developer perspective. So let's say blended. If I need to find the best words to describe what is blended, I'd say that the blended execution is the place where developers can run any apps using different standards and do native interoperability between these standards. So if, for example, I am only Ethereum developer, or I develop something for Ethereum Web3 and etc., and I can deploy my applications without any modifications. There is no need to bring any additional modifications into my code base. I just take original toolset, just replace RPC, and I can deploy it to Fluent. And then, for example, there's a guy, he's, let's say, a Solana developer, and he wants to do the same using his Solana application. There's no need to modify, to write anything, just deploy application on chain and run it. And both these chains exist in the same execution environments technically right now. And it means that they can start doing interactions, and even more, a new type of developers can start to build something on the edge between these two technologies and combine these two technologies together. And we wanted to achieve two things, two major points. The first one is do not break developer experience at all, and let developers to migrate and run the existing apps. And the second, to bring new SDKs for new developers who want to build on the top of these different execution environment combinations. And using this, you can build like an exchange that trades different assets from different standards across, for example, EVM, SVM, and all other execution environments.
Interesting. So you have like, let's assume I really like this like gaming library on, I'm going to say movement, right? So I can use that as a developer, but I'm basically, let's say SDK, whatever that is, that doesn't really matter, but I'm actually deploying on EVM. So I can actually make these interactions quite unique, and they can make calls in between, right? Is that the way to think about it?
Yeah.
You blend like not only blend the VMs, but you're also thinking about like blend the libraries, things that existed, integrations that people have done over time. And just because EVM and SVM and even like those two actually kind of lead most of the libraries probably coming with movement, I would say. Like those are three that I know that are probably relevant. But that's kind of the world, right? Like come and build whatever you want to build.
Yes, and also we expand this functionality by bringing new WebAssembly-based SDK for developers, and they can even take the well-known Web2 based libraries and compile them as a smart contract, it's not technically a smart contract, as a precompile, for example, and use this precompile. And using this method, they can enable new, for example, cryptography on chain, and they can bring well-known, well-audited libraries from the Web2. Like, for example, recently we introduced our chess game, and we actually didn't develop this. We just found an open source Rust-based library and developed our Solidity-based smart contract using this library.
It's awesome.
Yeah, that's one thing that I personally find really, really exciting about this. It's that it's just like creating this maximally like expressive environment for developers where you can, like, I think whether it's apps or smart contracts or libraries in different languages or from different traditionally VM environments, I kind of think about it as all just like building blocks and tools, right? And like, so we just have this like sandbox where you could just put like the maximum amount of like tools and building blocks. And it's like, okay, well, you're as a developer, that traditionally has led to much better products where you can, if you're trying to build a game, well, you can now draw from millions and millions of libraries, and you'll probably end up finding something that like fits your needs optimally. And maybe in one sense that's from the SVM world, maybe another that's from the EVM world, and like even just different pieces of your application. So let's just say you found, you're not limited to that one game engine, but there's like 5 options, and you found number 3 that works the best, and you kind of start iterating on that for kind of the core parts of the game. And then maybe another part of the app needs to like has more kind of like visual components where there's some, like languages from, libraries from TypeScript that ends up making more sense because there's clearly like millions of those that are very easy to kind of manipulate as a developer and iterate on. And then together it just creates like the best possible version of that app. So that's something that I'm certainly very excited about. And then the chess game demonstrates it, right? Like as Dimitri was referring to, we have like the Solidity part for most of the experience that people interface with, but kind of behind the scenes, there's Rust. And the user, kind of tying into the second part of your question, even in that scenario, doesn't actually have to think about the Rust, right? Like he's just using his EVM wallet, interacting with the chess game. But what the Rust part of it is doing is enabling something that either couldn't have existed before behind the scenes, or was just more efficient to build because somebody grabbed an extra building block, or just is more performant than it otherwise would be if implemented in Solidity, for example.
Yeah, you know what this reminds me of? I mean, I in my past life I was doing pretty much like ML development. So PyTorch or any of the Python is like actually compiles down to, I think it's C. So basically it's quite is it, maybe I'm mistaken, it's been quite some time. Some of the stuff in NumPy does compile to pretty much C. So you can get the same experience, but this quite reminds me of that sort of like abstraction. That's cool. And on the wallet side, maybe I'm thinking from the user side. Okay, developers basically, they come in, they deploy a Solidity contract, they deploy like a Solana contract, they deploy whatever contract they want to do on the VM, and then they can talk and utilize the libraries. On the user side, how does this work with a bunch of different wallets that, like, let's say an EVM requires or SVM requires? And if these, how do you kind of unify the wallet experience when you're interacting with these different VMs?
So since we implement standards, it means that we are fully compatible with all existing also Web3 APIs and all tooling that already exists on the market. Developers can use even with Fluent. So, for example, if like you have your favorite wallet for Ethereum, let's call it, I don't know, MetaMask, then you also can use MetaMask using Ethereum. If you want to use Solana wallet, you also can use Solana wallet. And of course, there are several like potential corner cases between like different cryptography users, but we describe how we handle these cases and how we let developers to be interoperable between the two different environments, 2, 3, and more different environments.
Okay, so let's say, is there a case where an app could be a part of like EVM and SVM, and you need to be signing, let's say, an EVM, like kind of you're doing something on the EVM side and then SVM side, like how do you unify do you need to build a new wallet, or is it just like you just do it with MetaMask only and it does take care of like the SVM side too?
So SVM and EVM are, this example is a bit tricky because both these two wallets uses different cryptography, and you cannot just take and combine. You need to rethink this method or integrate or add support of both cryptographies in, for example, in MetaMask and etc. So instead, developers can use any wallet they want. There is no like any like major limitations on because the question is, if you want to use Solana wallet to interact with your chain, what limits you? It's just a question of your address. and how you can be the address. If you want to use your Solana-based addresses and you want to interact with EVM apps, yes, you can do this. Maybe your user experience may be affected a bit, but anytime you can like transfer your assets to your MetaMask-based wallet and do all these native interactions from MetaMask wallet if you want. Probably we will need to develop several Web3 helpers, mostly related to improve developers the users UI experience, because sometimes they will need to interact with Web3 Ethereum-based applications through Solana wallet that Solana may not be able to do by default. So we'll need to just pack these parameters on our UI and just to help developers, for example, to use ERC20 tokens. It also can be solved by creating special like wrappers, adapters to support interop between, for example, ERC20, SPL token, and all other possible tokens on the chain.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's maybe, I'm going to take a step back and say, so this is chain abstracted, obviously. So we talk about chain abstraction quite here a lot. I think near folks have been hearing that for a while. What does that mean to you guys? Like, I guess, how does that first, like, what is Fluent's chain abstraction model? And then how do you guys see the chain abstraction world kind of play out?
Let me just add a couple of thoughts, like kind of like broadly speaking, and then I'll probably pass it to Dimitri to talk more about how, you know, these blended execution environments jive with a broader chain abstraction, chain abstracted future. So one thing that people often ask us, because we're talking about unifying a lot of these different like VMs into one place, and how we didn't even talk about it today yet, but it's very extensible, so we can actually pretty seamlessly add new environments over time. So people, you know, are like, that's really cool, but wait a minute, does that mean you guys think that, you know, there's going to be one big fat roll up to like rule them all? And like, should everybody else go home? Like, you know what I mean? And we're like, no, that's not our outlook. Like, we definitely see like valid reason for there being many chains. Like, we still like wholeheartedly believe in like the future of whether it's like thousands or millions of like rollups. But we just think that the blended execution is just for any one of those rollups or chains, just like a better way to actually like build that execution environment to, you know, better suit developers. So just wanted to like put that out there to start. So then the question is like, you know, you're back to the problem of like, how do you unify things across all of these chains? And I think that's where chain abstraction really comes in. And so I actually think it fits quite nicely, even just the mental model, just like one side comment. Like, I think that there's a cool mental model of like, we're kind of abstracting away different VMs within an execution environment, and then chain abstraction is obviously like abstracting like across those execution environments. But anyway, just like my 2 cents, like I'll probably Dimitri, I'll just pass it to you. I know we've talked a little bit about how these two things jive.
Yeah, totally agree. So usually you use chain abstraction to abstract something away from different specific technologies. But what we do is it's almost chain abstraction, but it's quite different approach, because instead of having only one unified technology that is used to abstract everything, you can use any execution environment you want to abstract yourself away from other technologies. So if you're familiar with, for example, Web3 development for Ethereum tooling, or you want to use MetaMask for different, for example, execution environments on chain, you can use only this one wallet to interact with all these execution environments. If you come from Solana space, you can use Solana wallets. So it's technically some sort of account abstraction, but developers and users can decide what entry point to use to enter account abstraction. Of course, it's possible. So if we can bring any execution environment, we also can bring an unified execution environment that can abstract away all this execution environment, and developers can also decide what execution environment they can use. So there is no limitation on how we can abstract all execution environments, all VMs, but we give developers and users availability to decide what technology they want to use and how they won't be abstracted from all the things. Also, what we abstract also is, for example, the way how we prove transition for ZK developers just create their apps and run it, and everything that happens under the hood with all these transition functions, instructions, translations, it's fully abstracted no matter what VM and what execution environment you use. There's no need to develop any specific additional circuits. You just use Fluent. Fluent automatically blends it into one execution environment, into one, not like a, let's call it, universal transition function, and represents and creates ZK proof for this. Also, we're all the time based on strict access lists. It means that that we can do non-optimistic parallelization, and you just enable your execution environment. You enable strict access lists, and you can get all the transaction parallelized. But even if you use different execution environments, and we abstract mostly technology. Because for developers, for users, we allow them to use any technology they want, and the way how they access this technology stack.
Yeah, I would say you guys are doing it's chain abstraction in the sense that you're abstracting VMs, which is execution, which is one of the most important things on a blockchain design. So where people interact, right? The other ones, people don't see the consensus, people don't see all of these stuff. Mainly it's they interact with the execution by sending a transaction. Which is quite interesting.
Yeah, but also if you want to abstract all these technologies, you need to create one more additional standard that can be used to abstract. So it doesn't solve a problem. You just get one more additional standard that also requires chain abstraction.
Yeah, because we just now see bunch of different chain abstraction methods of doing the same thing.
Yeah. Honestly, according to our research and the time spent on integration of different VMs and different execution environments, it's extremely hard to create an unified execution environment representation without additional, for example, overhead all the time. You need to find a trade-off between performance, usability, efficiency, and etc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how I'm curious, Altan, just from your perspective, what do you see as the core technical solutions that together make up chain abstraction? Something that I've tried to parse through over the past year, and you can school me on this and right now, is what are the how do we make that as concrete as possible? I feel like a lot of people have been very excited about chain abstraction, but to some degree it's it itself is a bit of an abstract concept. So how would you help somebody learning about it parse through the noise?
Yeah, I would say any technology that allows you to come to one front end and you're experiencing two chains at the same time, but you're not even realizing that you're experiencing at the same time. By the way, you're also getting the security of those two chains, because one of the problems you see is the best chain abstracted experience is probably Binance, if you think about it, or any of these KuCoins, right? You can track in a bunch of different chains, but the thing is it's centralized, right? So how do you get similar experiences? And maybe, let's say what you guys are doing, you're interacting with the two VMs at the same time, but you're not really seeing that, right? It really doesn't matter for you. The only thing you care about is the chess game, right? That you're playing. You don't really have to care about the underlying thing. That's what I see it. There's other ways to do it. Intents are a good way to do it. There's a bunch of different methods to do it. It could be an MPC that does it for us, but eventually comes to one interface and you kind of get everything in there. That's my take. I've been chatting with a bunch of folks, been chatting with Zaki, all of them. But essentially keeping also the security the same, right? Yeah.
Got it. So there's the experience part, and then there's maintaining certain properties part. And do you see that as right? So do you see that encompassing everything from from certain wallet standards to aggregation to maintain security to is it kind of an all-encompassing idea of how do we get this user to not have to think about all the shit under the covers? Is that the main idea?
Yeah, I would say so. How do you get all these tech stacks that user comes in and doesn't really care about any of these? The technology takes care of it. The world that we live in today, when you use your phone, when you use your computer, when you use the internet, there's a lot of stuff happening, right? There's a bunch of libraries that you use, there's VMs that you use, there's AWS that you use, there's IP, there's the HTTPS protocol that you're using, but you're not seeing any of them, right? You trust that in. do you trust it? Because I mean, obviously it's very well abstracted for you, right? Like chain abstraction is kind of the same vision, at least.
Yeah, no, I mean that makes perfect sense. And while we're like so focused on kind of offering like giving developers like really fine-grained like control over things in the execution environment because we think that that like ends up leading to better experiences, like no arguments to the fact that users should not have to think about any of this shit. So I fully aligned there.
Yeah. In your case, like users pretty much, they don't really care where they interact with an app. The app uses SVM, EVM, like doesn't really matter. It's developer's choice because developer are the business like creator, right? And then the user is the other side. Cool guys, this is it's getting interesting. So what I guess you guys mentioned about the chess example. What are the cool things? Like, there's a couple of builders that come into this and watch it. We get quite a good amount of views. Like, what are the things you guys think? Oh, if there was someone when Fluent goes mainnet, what's an application that you guys want to see? Is like, oh, this is something that I would fully support and kind of rave about it.
Yeah, I can touch on this for a second, and then and Dimitri, it seemed like you're about to jump in there. Apologies, but I I would say any like broadly speaking, anything that falls into this category of like blended applications, which right now we're supporting Solidity and Rust. By the time we get to testnet, I'm sure we'll end up having like the SVM support. So like anything that is like not that basically like shows the value in because we really do think that there's like a lot of value. So like shows the value in using the certain languages or certain kind of VM for certain parts of the application, and then using kind of like a different one for a different part of the application because it's important enough to like have one part be like very efficient in like Rust, and then the other part be just like iterated on more quickly in Solidity. So like just like very broadly, I think that we're gonna try to make a heavy push for these blended apps. But then specifically like what types of apps, I'm personally very excited for consumer social. I know that's kind of in the zeitgeist right now with the election and Polymarket and all that, and it's starting to become pretty like consensus. But I think for good reason. Like I think one thing that we've found over the years is that um, it's a lot harder to get the masses to care about like the serious applications, and most likely, in my opinion, it'll be the silly, stupid, fun applications that end up steering the way. And then, of course, that gets wallets in people's hands, and then they can start interacting with like decentralized finance and all of this types of stuff. But that I think there's a huge opportunity right now to just double down on what's working. And so, not I don't strictly mean prediction markets, but some of those like lighter weight consumer applications. Like I think, regardless of kind of what chains they're on, we should just triple down on those. So certainly very excited to for people who are building in that direction. And I think some of the things that are coming down the pipeline for Fluent align pretty nicely with that. Clearly, if we support kind of like TypeScript or AssemblyScript, there's a lot of libraries that come along with it that have been built for the web applications that we interact with today that I think will really be interesting. And it's just kind of the types of people who are likely to come into the space and develop those types of applications. I think it's really important that we have more like accessible tools that lower the learning curve for them, and I think Fluent's really well suited for that as well. So that's my 2 cents. But Dimitri might have different areas of excitement. I don't know.
Yeah, so I have a developer way of thinking, and my favorite answer on this question is the best app you can build on Fluent is an app you cannot build on other platforms. So if you can imagine an application you cannot build on Ethereum because of some technical limitations, then you can build this app on Fluent because Fluent disables all these limitations that developers experience. For example, we're really interested in what developers can build on the edge between different execution environments because usually it requires you to develop some additional like bridging assets. You need to have like main chain, secondary chain. You need to synchronize all the state. you need to solve a block Oracle problem. But what developers can build if you can use native interop between two chains, and you can execute transactions that operates across different execution environments in one transaction synchronously? What developers can build in this case? We can create an exchange that trades different assets across different chains. For example, you can create even, since you have Rust, you can even simulate some sort of trading activity. You can do some sort of elections. You can do censorship checks. You can do, for example, verifiable censorship checks. Everything that can require some sort of verification, you can run on chain, and you can run it using different execution environments, and then you can combine it and use together. For example, the chess game, it uses a combination of ERC20 plus Solidity plus Rust application. Rust application is used to verify correctness of users' moves, and then Solidity application means token rewards to the accountant, to the winner, actually. And such type of applications, so I think it's what developers can really build very efficiently, and such applications can be useful for users, for marketing, etc. For community, for marketing. Yeah.
That's great. So what I hear is pretty much consumer apps getting easier, and you can pretty much use TypeScript and other, because eventually you get to support them anyway, because it's WASM, right? And then the other thing is pretty much combining standards between two different chains, which becomes like an exchanges, or could be anything really that other people want to build on. But it's the beauty of it is, like, for example, the chain abstracted world, like you should be able to do one thing on another chain and something else on the other. This is more like I do it on one chain. Everything happens on one transaction versus a couple of transactions that you send onto different blockchains. So it's a bit more efficient than just like building between, I would say, like a Solana SVM blockchain and an EVM blockchain.
Yeah, right. If, for example, I am a software developer, I want to run an application on Ethereum, and I'm looking, as a developer, I start to think, why do I need to run my application, for example, on Ethereum, if I can run it on Fluent, where I can combine different execution environments, and since it's Ethereum-based rollup, I can also share the same liquidity, the same assets, and do not lose any, for example, and it doesn't bring any additional security risks to my assets, to my application. So, and the same question, it can ask, for example, Solana developer, field developer, all existing execution environment developers can like work together on the same place. And there is no need for them to modify the applications anyhow. They just change the RPC endpoint and run the application. That's it. And the environment brings all these benefits to these developers automatically.
Yeah, I think I like a almost cultural answer to this too. Like, one thing I think Solana got really, really right that most other L2s, if any, like, well, I don't think any other L2s have really gotten this quite right, which is having like a very product centric mentality. Like, I think a lot of other L2s have a very like research centric mentality, which is fine, but it's a means to an end. Like, you do the research and that's super important, but the reason you do it is to build like the best possible product for people. And in this case, we're building basically developer platforms. And just like our point of view is that, like, the best products, as I said before, get built when you have kind of like, the best possible tools for each task. And so like, I think one thing that Solana did really well is foster that type of culture specifically, where it's like, hey, in the early days, think about it. Horrible docs. Clearly Rust is like a more kind of intense language to learn, but you know what? If you're somebody who knows it, you like kind of take pride in that. And like I think they did a really good job, like tending to those types of developers and saying like, hey, here's this like raw but very powerful thing that you can build kick-ass experiences on and do things you couldn't do before. And like, I would love, regardless of the applications, I mentioned social, consumer and stuff, because I think that that's like a nice wedge into kind of the mass market for us as an industry right now. But the more fundamentally, like, I want to appeal to developers that want to push the boundaries and be very like product centric and do things like just build some crazy shit on Fluent. Like it's like this raw, powerful like beast that we honestly released without the vanity metrics and a lot of other things that I get really sick of and rant about on Twitter. So I think that, as Dimitri said, like playing it like the edge of these different environments, I think creates some really awesome products, and would love to see people who are excited about it.
Yeah, it's quite fun. I'm quite excited about it too, because you can combine this as like, I have a developer background. So if I were to come in right now, it would be quite exciting to kind of play with it. Doing the yapping job as we speak, so I don't get the chance to build as much as I used to, but it's quite fun. I would have enjoyed that. So what's the current status of you guys? I guess the Fluent L2. I know you guys have also the stack. Where are you guys with the development? And the typical question of a crypto dude, which is when mainnet. That's probably that I have the right to ask here. So yeah, just wanted to hear more about your plans.
Yeah, so we're still under development. We released our first public developer preview version 2 months ago. I think up to a month ago. Where developers can start doing experiments with EVM plus WebAssembly. And right now we're developing SVM support and also planning to do FuelVM in the upcoming future. We are planning to, we also develop right now so-called blending SDK. The goal of blending SDK is to let developers to create their own execution environments and run on the top of Fluent, because right now we develop all execution environments on our own and we create state transitions for this environment, but we want developers to be able to create their own environments, and through special blended SDK or blending SDK, we haven't decided what name to use right now, and developers will be able to enable their chains and create these new execution environments on chain. Also, we're planning to make it public and available for developers on our public testnet that is coming this fall in like 2 or 3 months, within 2 or 3 months. And it's gonna have working SVM, also a blending SDK, EVM apps, and WebAssembly apps, like pure WebAssembly apps. And mainnet is coming optimistically second quarter next year.
I see. And how are you guys thinking about the GTM side? I guess you guys can play on the Solidity game, which is just acquire Solidity Mind Share. Is it SVM? Like, how do you think about it now? How do you think like Fluent adoption could be near?
Yep. So I think it's kind of a hybrid of those things. There's certainly a lot of Solidity apps that we're talking to that are excited about just the vision for this blended execution thing, and the prism to which they see this through is, hey, I would want to deploy my Solidity app because it would have access to kind of net new apps that either weren't possible before, such as these blended apps we're talking about, or apps that are ported over from, expanded from different environments, such as like SVM apps, like literally sitting in the same place that can easily share liquidity, etc. And so far, like from the go-to-market side, we've been focused on, at least on like the ecosystem BD side, we've been focused on that. We're starting conversations with folks in some other ecosystems, and also like more from the DevRel bottom-up side. Talking to a lot of people building like gaming and social type use cases who like already coming in, they know Rust. They kind of see the value. A lot of these are like world builders, right? They see the value of like some of the social consumer apps as like a step towards fully on-chain games and immersive worlds and autonomous worlds and stuff. So like there's kind of those two thrusts, Solidity and then kind of more like Rust and blended.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I would have been excited to do to kind of be the builder in that world. Cool, guys. But just wanted to kind of wrap everything up. Let's say somebody listened to this podcast and what they should walk away from. I'll start with you, Dimitri, and then give it to Dino because you guys have a different perspective on things. I think you guys blend well in terms of, pun intended. But well, in terms of the skill sets, what would be the one thing that a listener should walk away from this podcast?
Do you want to start, Dinner?
Dimitri, all you, man. All you, man. I want to hear you first.
Yeah, so the one thing, so I think the most important is that we don't break developer experience or user experience, but we want to expand it and make it expandable. So the place where developers can live in expandable execution environment that is fully like abstracted and unified and efficient in terms of proving execution, developer experience, and it's like a place where developers, users from different ecosystem, from different standards, from different EMs, from different languages can live together and share the same experience, share the same resources, and and prove everything in the same place and settle on Ethereum.
So I guess if there was one takeaway, I would probably say, I don't know, man. Like these blockchains can just like do more. Like we want to appeal to people like that who also share the same mentality. Like more in terms of use cases, and how we can create like cool experiences with these tools that like the masses will like beyond just like the crypto Twitter circle jerk. Like I really want to just like appeal to builders who want to solve real problems, frankly. And then I think like our tool, like our platform, maps really well to that because you can build a lot more interesting things. So yeah, if you're if you're trying to if your mentality is that you want to push the boundaries of what's been possible on chain before, I think blended execution environments are the right move for you. So
great. And whoever, if they like to learn more about Fluent, where should they go? Should they go you guys' Twitter accounts or like a website or any docs that you guys wanna share? We can also link it in the video as well.
there's a few places. Yeah, I think maybe we can throw some links in there to getting started building like a blending app and maybe like our DevNet. But I would say reach out to us on a variety of platforms. You can jump into our Discord. There's fairly active community in there. If you're on that side of things, if you're a dev, definitely feel free to jump in there as well, or reach out directly. Frankly, I'm very accessible. Like on Twitter, you can slide into the DM of @FluentXYZ or any other route to us. I think everybody in the team is like pretty reachable. So definitely reach out and we'll walk you through the DevNet, get you started.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for coming up, guys. I really enjoy this one. It's quite unique. We usually do this with like other kind of builders in a sense, but this is more like chain abstraction within a blockchain, which is quite cool. So I kind of like that. Well, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man. This was fun.
Yeah, thanks.